Hello, good morning, shalom to my dear friends, and thank you for joining me on my YouTube channel. So today we're going to talk about Menachot 77a, Menachot Daf 77a, which is a fascinating page that continues our discussion of the previous Daf and intricate details of the Menachos, meal offerings in the Beit HaMikdash. The primary focus of our Daf today revolves around the precise measurements and preparation of various meal offerings and the lechem upon them and shewbread. The Gemara on this Daf delves into the fundamental discussion regarding biblical measures. We are told about the different sizes of a seah and a kav, measures used in the wilderness versus those used in Jerusalem. This distinction is crucial for understanding the exact quantity of flour required for the various offerings. On the Mishnah 77a, explicitly states the amount of flour for the loaves of the Thanksgiving offering and the matzah loaf, distinguishing between leavened and unleavened, and further the three types of matzah: Todah Loaves, kim wafers, and Rechuva poached in water. A key takeaway from today's daf is the principle by Rav Chisda from the verse in Ezekiel 45:11, the ephah and the bat shall be of one measure. This verse is used to establish that an ephah is equivalent to 3 seah. This seemingly simple mathematical equation has profound implications from the understanding the sanctity and exactitude required in the temple. Gemara then meticulously applies these measures to various types of bread offerings. Furthermore, we explore the concept of shishus milbar, an increase of 1/6 from the outside. This means that the additional 6 is calculated on top of the original amount, rather than being a 6th of the total combined amount. This fine distinction, though technical, highlights the meticulous nature of halacha, and how every word and phrase in the Torah Mishnah is dissected and understood with profound precision by our sages. In essence, Menachot 77a is a testament to the divine precision woven into the fabric of the temple service. It reminds us that even seemingly mundane details of measures carry immense spiritual weight, reflecting the Almighty's desire for perfection in the service. Join me again tomorrow. We'll continue our journey in the daf. And let's start. The Mishnah elaborates. So just read the Mishnah from the previous one. The flour for the loaves accompanying the thanks offering would come from a measure of 5 Jerusalem seah offering, which are equivalent to 6 wilderness seah. The seah referred to in the Bible when the Jewish people were in the wilderness is smaller than the seah used later in Jerusalem. This is equivalent to 2 ephahs, each ephah being 3 wilderness seah. These 2 ephahs are 20 measures of a tenth of an ephah. 10 of these tenths were used to make leavened loaves, and 10 of these tenths were used to make unleavened loaves, i.e. matzah. The Mishnah elaborates, there are 10 tenths for the loaves of leavened bread, and a tenth of an ephah per loaf. And there are 10 tenths for the loaves of matzah. So what does that mean? Two ephahs of flour were bought for the meal offering, accompanying the thanks offering. 1 ephah was made into 10 loaves of leavened bread, a tenth of an ephah per loaf. The other ephah was made into 30 loaves of matzah, 10 loaves oven baked, 10 loaves of wafers, and 10 loaves poached in water, in accordance with the Mishnah as from the Rambam Sefer Avodah Hilchos Matzah Kabbalah 9:17-18. And among the loaves of matzah there were 3 types: loaves, wafers, and those poached in water. Rechuva, those poached in water. Among the loaves of the thanks offering are 10 loaves poached in water. There are different opinions with regard to how these loaves are prepared. According to Rashi, see Rashi manuscript on Rashi 53a and on Devachim 50b, they are poached in hot water, and this opinion is supported by the Tosefta and 7:7. The commentaries discuss when the poaching takes place. Rabbeinu Gershom Hagolah says that it was after baking, whereas the Tosefta indicates it was before baking. 10 loaves of each type. Consequently, there are 3 1/3 tenths of an ephah for each type, for each and every type. 3 loaves per tenth of an ephah. And in the Jerusalem measure, there are 30 kav. A kav is a unit of dry volume measuring 1/6 of a seah. There are several opinions as to the exact volume of a kav in today's measures, ranging from 1.3 liters to 2.5 liters. 15 kav for the loaves of leavened bread, and 15 for the loaves of matzah. The Mishnah elaborates, there are 15 kav for loaves of leavened bread, 1.5 kav per loaf. There are 15 kav for the loaves of matzah, and among the loaves of matzah there are 3 types: loaves, wafers, and those poached in water. Consequently, there are 5 kav for each and every type, 2 loaves per kav. Gemara. The Mishnah teaches the flour The flour for the loaves accompanying the thanks offering would come from a measure of 5 Jerusalem seah, which are equivalent to 6 wilderness seah. The seah referred to in the Bible when the Jewish people in the wilderness is smaller than the seah used later in Jerusalem. This is equivalent to 2 ephahs, each ephah being 3 wilderness seah. The Gemara asks, from where are these matters, i.e., that there are 3 seah in an ephah derived? Rav Chisda said, they are derived from a verse, as the verse states, the ephah and the bat shall be of one measure in Ezekiel 45:11. Therefore, just as the bat, a measure for liquids, is 3 seah, so too the ephah, a measure for dry goods, is 3 seah. The Gemara asks, and as for the bat itself, from where do we derive its measure? If we say that we derive it from that which is written in the same verse, that the bat may contain a 10th part of a homer, and since one homer consists of 30 seah, one bat is equivalent to 3 seah, there's a difficulty with regard to an ephah as well. Is it in the same verse, an ephah a 10th part of a homer? Why then must the measure of an ephah be derived from that of a bat? Well, I do not know how much the measure of a homer is. Consequently, verse states that the ephah is 1/10 of 1 homer. This does not demonstrate the measure of an ephah. Here too, I do not know how much the measure of a bat is. Rather, derive the volume of an ephah from here, from a subsequent verse, where it is written with regard to separated zuma, and set the portion of oil and the bat of oil, it shall be a tithe of a bat out of a core, which is 10 bat, even a homer, for 10 bat are homer. Ezekiel 45:14. The verse states that there are 10 bat in 1 core and 10 bat in 1 homer. Since it is known that 1 core is equivalent to 30 seah, the verse indicates there are also 30 seah in 1 homer. It can therefore be derived from the verse that there are 3 seah in 1 bat, and consequently 3 seah in 1 ephah. The Mishnah teaches that the sages increase the size of the measures so that 5 Jerusalem measures are equivalent to 6 wilderness measures. With regard to the practice of augmenting measures, Shmuel says, if the residents of a certain place want to change the standard of their measures and augment them by a certain fraction, they may not increase the measures by more than 1/6. So what does that mean? In Sifin al-Hamidas Yoseh Mishsus. If the residents of a state, province, or city decide to change their system of measures and increase the size of the measures by a certain fraction, there is an upper limit beyond which they may not increase them. This was stated by Shmuel and Bava Batra 90a. The Gemara there could not find a rationale for this statement, which is why Rav Chisda cited the version from Ezekiel, explaining that it was passed down as a generation based on this verse. The Me'ira and the Bava Batra 90a, and see the rationale on Bava Batra 90b. The early commentators explain that this is the halacha only if they wish to retain the titles of the old measures. If they seek to establish entirely new measures or coins or give them new names, this limitation does not apply, and it is unlikely that such a change would lead to mistakes. If the residents of a country wish to change their standards of their measures or weights, they may not increase them by more than 1/6. For example, it is permitted for them to increase the measure of a calf from 5 units to 6, but no more. This halacha in the context of the statement of Shmuel. If they wish to reduce the standard measures, they may do so without limitation. And say for Ezekiel and Yechezkel 17 230-115 on the Shema there. And they may not increase the value of a coin by more than 1/6 of its previous value. And one who profits from his sales may not profit by more than 1/6. The court must appoint supervisors of market prices to ensure that those who sell staple food items, e.g. wine, oil, and flour, do not earn a profit more than 1/6 of the item's value. In the case of a storekeeper who sells each item individually, his effort and expense are taken into account in establishing the price. These restrictions apply when the court's directives are followed by all. If all the other storekeepers ignore the directives of the court, or there are Gentile storekeepers over whom the court has no authority, an individual God-fearing Jew is not required to suffer a loss. I'm saying from Ezekiel, Hilchot Mechira 14:1, see Sefer Shoftim, Hilchot Sanhedrin 1:1, Shulchan Aruch Mishpat 231:20, and let's see the Shema there. The Gemara analyzes these statements. When Shmuel said they may not increase the measure by more than 1/6, what is the reason for this? If we say this because doing so causes market prices to rise, Since the arriving merchants have to raise their prices to suit the new measures, they might take advantage and raise them to more than is necessary. That's in the Rashman on about to 90b. Alternatively, distributors of goods may be reluctant to provide merchandise for the merchants because they lack the confidence that they will receive appropriate compensation for the change in the size of the measures. This will cause a shortage of goods, which in turn would lead to a rise in prices. The same concern should apply to raising the prices by 1/6, and therefore they should also not be allowed. Rather, one might say that the prohibition is due to the concern for exploitation, and they may increase the measures only by up to 1/6, so that there will not be notification of the transaction, as the transaction is nullified only when the disparity is more than 1/6 of the value of the item. The Gemara raises an objection, but doesn't rather say, with regard to any item that is otherwise subject to the halakha of exploitation and is sold by measure or weight or by number. Rashi explains that this is because both the buyer and the seller are punctilious with regard to items that are sold by measure, by weight, or by count, and do not waive the right to compensation. For even a small mistake in the measure or weight or count, the statement applies to transactions involving land as well, even if the error is less than the ratio that constitutes exploitation. Even if the disparity is less than the measure of exploitation, the transaction is reversed. With regard to one who sells merchandise by weight, measure, weight, or number, if any mistake is made, the sale is valid, and the buyer or seller must make up the missing amount. For example, if one sold 100 nuts, but provided the buyer with only 99, the sale is valid, and the seller must give the buyer one more nut. If the seller gave the buyer 10 nuts, the sale is valid, but the buyer must return the extra nut, even if many years have passed since the sale. From the Mikash. With regard to a sale of land, if the seller cannot either acquire amount of land from adjoining fields, the transaction is nullified. Even if the two perform the formal act of acquisition, whereby each declared he had nothing in his possession that belonged to the other, the extra or missing merchandise must be returned because the formal act was performed in error. And that's from the Rambam Sefer Kinin Hilchot Mechira 8:6, 15:1-2, Shulchan Aruch HaMikvah 232:1. A disparity of 1/6 between the value of an item and its price constitutes exploitation only in cases where there is room for error in assessing the value of an item. In a case where the details of the item are easily quantifiable, any deviation from the designated quantity results in a nullification of the transaction. The statement of Shmuel concerning sales involves measures, rather than the prohibition is for the benefit of the merchant, so that there will not be a loss suffered by the merchant, who might not realize that a new standard was issued and might sell in accordance with the old standard. Since the merchant usually enjoys a profit of 1/6 of the value of an item, if the standard is not increased by more than this amount, he will not suffer a loss, or at worst he will forfeit his profit margin. And the Gemara knows this explanation is also difficult, since if the aim is to ensure that it will not be a loss for the merchant, does he not need to earn a profit? This is a well-known adage. There's a well-known adage in this regard. If you buy and sell without earning any profit, will you be called a merchant? A merchant must profit from his sales. Therefore, if this was instituted for the protection of merchants, they should have ensured that they earn a profit. Rather, Rav Chisda said, the prohibition is not based on logical reasoning. Instead, Shmuel found the verse interpreted homiletically. And the shekel shall be 20 geva, 20 shekels, 5 and 20 shekels, 10 and 5 shekels shall be your manna. Ezekiel 45:12. According to this verse, the sum of all the numbers, 60 shekels is equivalent to a manna. This is problematic. How can a manna consist of 60 shekels? Since each biblical shekel is equivalent to 4 dinars. If a manna is equal to 60 shekels, a manna is 240 dinars. But a manna is actually equal to 25 shekels, which is 100 dinars. Rather, one can learn from the verse the matters. Learn from it that the sacred manna was doubled. Manna shel kodesh kaful haya. Ezekiel is speaking about the temple and dedication for its upkeep. Similarly, the Gemara in Brachot 5:8 seeks to prove from the Bible that the value of a sacred talent, as mentioned in the book of Exodus, was doubly accepted value of a talent, which is equivalent to 1,500 shekels. The Gemara concludes there that this proportion is derived from the verse in the book of Ezekiel cited here. This demonstrates that sacred coins of large value were double in value to the standard coins, so it equaled 200 and not 100 dinars. And furthermore, as Ezekiel stated that the manna shall be 60 shekels, not 50, learn from it that the community may increase measures, but they may not increase them by more than 1/6. The halacha that measures may not be increased by more than 1/6 is derived from the fact that the manna was increased to 200 dinars, 240 dinars, rather than to the round figure of 250 migash. And learn from it that 1/6 is calculated from the outside. With the expectation in the transaction is 1/6 of the value of the transaction, the difference between the value and the price must be returned. For example, if one sold an item worth 6 dinars for 5, or an item worth 7 dinars for 6, or an item worth 5 dinars for 6, or an item worth 6 dinars for 7, this is exploitation. But if the transaction is valid, and the party that exploited the other is obligated to pay the difference to render it a fair transaction. On Sefer Kini Hilchah Mechira 12:2, i.e., it is 1/6 of the final sum, which is 1/5 of the previous sum. Ravina said, the Mishnah is also precisely formulated so as to reflect the fact that 1/6 increase is calculated from the outside, as it teaches for the flour of the loaves accompanying the thanks offering would come from a measure of 5 Jerusalem seah flour, which are equivalent to 6 wilderness seah. One can infer that the seah could be increased only by 1/6 from the outside. The halacha affirms and conclude from it that this is the halacha. Thank you for listening and all the best. Bye.